Imagine this. You wake up in a room that's not quite yours, but is familiar enough to lull you back into your routine. Your phone is already in your hand before your feet hit the floor. Notifications flash like fireworks. Messages, memes, doom scroll headlines, and half-hearted compliments masked as likes. You stare. You scroll. Something tightens in your chest, though you can't name it. You tell yourself it's just how mornings are now. But beneath the distraction, there's a strange kind of ache, an invisible thread pulling you away from something important. You just don't know what. You brush your teeth while watching a video you won't remember. Eat while skimming arguments you're not part of. Laugh at jokes you didn't really find funny. Hours pass. You don't notice. You fill silence with noise, boredom with stimulation, discomfort with dopamine. There's no moment left unoccupied. You're always feeding something always hungry. And then, just before bed, you feel it again, that hollowness, a fleeting flash of, what am I even doing? It comes like a ghost through a cracked door, but you close it quickly. Another scroll, another snack, another hit of whatever keeps the questions away. Sleep comes and the cycle renews. Now ask yourself, what are you really addicted to? You think it's social media, or sugar, or your phone, maybe porn, maybe comfort. And yes, on the surface, those are the symptoms. But deep down, beneath the visible compulsions, there's something more disturbing at play. A hidden root, a psychological gravity pulling you toward these things not because you desire them, but because they numb you from what you actually crave. Here's the paradox. We live in an era of limitless access to pleasure, entertainment, and information, yet never before have we been more anxious, unfulfilled, and distracted. We have more tools for self-expression, and yet most people don't know who they are. More food than ever, and we starve emotionally. More voices than ever, and fewer truths being told. If addiction is a repeated pursuit of something that ultimately harms you, why do we so passionately chase things that leave us emptier? What if the things you think you want are actually masks for things you fear? And what if your brain, shaped by millions of years of evolution and hijacked by modern society, no longer distinguishes between what soothes you and what silently destroys you? We were never taught to ask this. We were taught to chase success, not meaning, to soothe discomfort, not explore it, to optimize happiness, not question what happiness even means. Carl Jung once said, people would do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. What if addiction, real addiction, isn't just about drugs or dopamine? What if it's about escape? Escape from a void. The mirror, the terrifying freedom of actually knowing yourself? Why do we spend hours consuming empty content, but can't spend 5 minutes alone in silence without reaching for a screen? Why do we crave validation from people we don't respect? Why do we fear boredom so much when some of the greatest insights come from stillness? Could it be that we're addicted not to the things themselves, but to the avoidance of something far deeper? Now picture this. A man stands in a crowded city street. Noise surrounds him. Screens glow from every window. Music blasts from passing cars. Ads scream promises of pleasure and purpose. But he isn't looking. He stands still, utterly still. He's not seeking stimulation. He's seeking silence, reflection, reality. And for a moment, he sees the world for what it is. Not a playground of freedom, but a labyrinth of distractions. And in that moment of terrifying clarity, he whispers a question most are too afraid to ask. What am I really running from? This is where the real conversation begins. Because if we are addicted to wrong things, it means we've misunderstood not just our behavior, but our very nature. Something deeper is broken, something ancient, something psychological, philosophical, and dangerously modern. And it's time to face it. Let's peel back the surface. The glowing screens, the compulsive scrolling, the sugary snacks, the insatiable need to be seen, liked, validated. These are not the real problem. They are the smoke. But something beneath is burning. And to find it, we have to descend into the basement of the human psyche, the place most people spend their lives avoiding. Start with this truth. You were not born craving these things. You were born with curiosity, wonder, a natural rhythm attuned to silence, presence, and play. But somewhere along the line, That signal got scrambled. You were taught, not consciously but through experience, that your internal world wasn't safe, that your feelings were inconvenient, that your worth had to be earned. And so you began to look outward. Psychologist and physician Gabor Maté speaks often about addiction not as a choice or moral failing, but as a response to pain. He writes, "The question is not why the addiction, but why the pain. The child who wasn't held, who was punished for crying, who learned that achievement earns love. This child grows into an adult who doesn't know how to sit with discomfort, and discomfort becomes the enemy. Now enter the modern world, a society that profits from your discomfort. Every ad, every algorithm, every curated feed and infinite scroll is designed to target not your desires, but your lack, your insecurity, your need to escape. We don't consume because we're fulfilled. We consume because we feel something is missing. And the marketplace is more than happy to provide illusions to fill that void. But the void is not material. It is existential. Jean-Paul Sartre called this the human condition of nausea, the dizzying recognition that we are free, yet responsible for creating meaning in a universe that offers none. That freedom is terrifying, and instead of embracing it, we often flee into distraction, into ideology, into addiction, not because these things bring us peace, but because they keep us from having to confront the mirror. Arthur Schopenhauer viewed life as a cycle of craving and suffering, desire being the root of all agony. We are always pulled forward by what we lack, never at rest. He believed we are driven by the will, an unconscious force that causes endless striving. But what he couldn't see in his time is how this primal force has been weaponized, commercialized into an industry of craving. You don't just want things anymore. You are made to want things you never even needed. And then there's Carl Jung, who pointed out something most modern psychology still ignores. The shadow, the part of you that holds everything you reject, deny, or cannot face. All your unmet needs, repressed emotions, forgotten traumas. This is where the real addiction begins. Because addiction, at its core, is not a habit. It's a surrogate, a placeholder for something you were never allowed to fully feel. Imagine being hungry, but instead of eating real food, you're given endless chewing gum. It occupies the mouth. It feels like doing something, but it never nourishes. That's what most modern addictions are. Chewing gum for the soul. Now let's go deeper. What do we really crave when we binge watch, overeat, or chase likes? We crave connection, but settle for validation. We crave purpose, but settle for productivity. We crave transcendence, but settle for intoxication. We crave truth, but settle for opinions that flatter our identity. And all the while, the deeper need, the one that asks us to sit in silence, to feel the buried pain, to examine the fear of death, failure, insignificance, is left untouched. Because it's harder. Because it's not marketable. Because facing the truth might mean unraveling the version of ourselves we spent years building. You weren't designed for this world. Not this world. Not the endlessly connected, hyper-distracted, dopamine on-demand simulation you've been conditioned to accept as normal. Your psyche evolved for slowness, for meaningful struggle, for solitude, for community, not performance, for ritual, not routine. And when these ancestral needs are replaced with artificial substitutes, your nervous system revolts. Quietly, chronically, with anxiety, fatigue, numbness, restlessness. But instead of listening, we reach for the very things making us sick. Why? Because real healing is painful. It requires dismantling. It requires the death of false identities, the surfacing of shame, the owning of wounds. And so, we pick the easy poison over the hard cure. You are not addicted to the wrong things because you are weak. You are addicted to the wrong things because you were trained to fear the right ones. Stillness, vulnerability, self-confrontation, the truth of your unmet grief, unlived dreams, and silent screams. This is the soil where transformation grows, but only if you dare to touch it. And yet, few do. It's easier to stay on the surface, to blame the tech, the sugar, the system. And yes, they play a part. But the deeper question, the dangerous question, is not what's been done to you. It's what you're now doing to yourself to stay comfortable in your own disconnection. Addiction is not just a glitch in the system. It is the system. The entire structure of modern media, modern work, modern culture is built on your unconsciousness. To be fully awake in this world is to be a threat to it. So now the tension tightens. What happens when you stop feeding the illusion? What's left when the noise falls silent? What do you see when the mirror isn't fogged by distraction? That answer is coming. But first, you must see what your distractions have cost you, not in wasted hours, but in wasted being. You think you're just passing time, but time is not something you pass. It's something you trade. And every time you reach for that comforting distraction, every unconscious scroll, every impulsive bite, every tiny escape, you're making an invisible exchange, pieces of your presence for a fragment of illusion. But here's what no one tells you. Addiction isn't just about losing time. It's about losing yourself. Let's start with the brain. Every time you indulge a compulsion, your neural pathways reinforce themselves. Dopamine floods your system, not as a reward for genuine fulfillment, but as a bribe, a chemical trick that keeps you coming back to the same dead end. Your brain doesn't care if what you're doing is good for you. It cares if it's predictable and rewarding. In that order, neuroscientist Anna Lemke calls this the dopamine deficit state. The more artificial pleasure you consume, the less capable you become of enjoying natural joy. Sunshine, silence, a deep conversation, the simple act of breathing, they lose color like washed-out paintings. You recalibrated your baseline to chaos. And the tragedy is that you don't notice it happening. You start thinking this is just how life feels now. You're not broken. You're just overstimulated. You're not apathetic. You're anesthetized. You're not lazy. You're overwhelmed by an invisible war inside your own mind. And that war is not just psychological. It's spiritual, existential. Because addiction, in its deepest form, severs you from meaning. Think about this. What do all the wrong addictions have in common? They promise relief, not healing. They demand nothing of your soul. They give you something to do, so you don't have to be. When you binge watch a show to avoid loneliness, you're not addressing your need for connection. You're sedating it. When you scroll endlessly to avoid boredom, you're not engaging with life silence. You're drowning it. When you chase validation through appearance or status, you're not building self-worth. You're outsourcing it. And over time, something dies inside. The part of you that once felt deeply. The part that could sit in awe, wonder, stillness. The part that whispered your real desires before they were drowned in noise. Now look outside. Zoom out from your personal habits and ask, what happens to a society addicted to the wrong things? You get disconnection masquerading as connection. Performance replacing authenticity. Endless opinion, but no wisdom. Hyperproductivity, but no purpose. We become so busy being stimulated that we forget what it means to be alive. And then come the symptoms, what Viktor Frankl might have called the existential vacuum, the epidemic of anxiety that no medication seems to fully resolve, the quiet despair of people who have it all but feel nothing, the erosion of attention, making meaningful thought nearly impossible, the rising tide of loneliness in an era where you're never alone. These aren't random malfunctions. They are consequences, the psychic cost of choosing distraction over depth. You think you're numbing your pain, but you're also numbing your capacity for joy. You think you're killing time, but time is killing you, slowly, quietly, without confrontation, while you're entertained. And perhaps the most disturbing truth of all, your addictions shape your identity. The things you repeat become the architecture of your personality. You become what you consume, not just physically, but mentally, spiritually. If you feed your mind superficiality, you become superficial. If you feed it outrage, you become reactive. If you feed it beauty, stillness, wisdom, you remember what it means to be human. But who is teaching you this? Not the culture, not the algorithm, not the marketplace that profits from your unconsciousness. No, they whisper something else. That fulfillment is out there, that one more purchase, one more scroll, one more click will get you there. And so you chase shadows, forever hungry, forever almost satisfied. Now here's where it gets darker. The longer you live in this state of addiction disguised as lifestyle, the more alienated you become, not just from others, but from yourself. You begin to feel like a stranger in your own life. You forget how to sit with your thoughts. You flinch at silence like it's a threat. You avoid mirrors, not because you hate your reflection, but because you don't recognize who's looking back. And here's the trap. The more disconnected you become, the more you seek connection to the very things causing your disconnection. It's a loop, a hall of mirrors, and you don't even see it until something breaks. Sometimes it's a burnout, sometimes a breakup, sometimes an existential crisis that pulls you under like an undertow. And in that silence, finally, painfully, you glimpse it. You've been feeding the wrong hunger. You weren't just trying to feel better. You were trying to feel less. Less fear, less loneliness, less grief, less of the sacred discomfort that calls you into transformation. But growth lives on the other side of that discomfort. And the longer you numb it, the longer you delay your awakening. So now we stand on a ledge. You've seen the surface. You've tasted the cost. And you feel it. The quiet rebellion rising inside you. That whisper that says, there must be more than this. There is. But to reach it, you must do something radical. Stop running. Not forever. Just long enough to hear the truth your addiction has been drowning. Because beneath the chaos, the numbing, the repetition, there's a different path. One that begins not with more stimulation, but with less. Not with escape, but with facing. And that's where we go next. You don't need another app. You don't need a 10-step productivity hack. You don't need to wake up at 5 a.m., run 10 miles, or drink mushroom smoothies to fix your soul. You need a rebellion. A quiet one. A sacred one. Not against society. Not against a machine. But against the part of you that settled for this hollow version of life. Because what's been taken from you wasn't just time. It wasn't just attention. It was sovereignty. You've outsourced your sense of meaning. You've let algorithms become your compass. You've let convenience choke your depth. And now it's time to take it back. But let's be honest. The system that numbed you won't teach you how to feel again. If you want to break free from the wrong addictions, you must be ready to do the unthinkable in this era. Feel your hunger without feeding it. Sit in the void without escaping it. Choose discomfort with open eyes. And it starts here. 1. Silence is revolution. Turn everything off. Just for a while. No background noise. No scrolling. No escape. Sit. Breathe. Watch what arises. At first, it'll feel unbearable like withdrawal. That's because it is. You're detoxing not from technology, but from avoidance. The silence will taunt you. You'll feel urges like tiny earthquakes. But if you can hold that stillness for even 10 minutes a day, something ancient begins to wake up. The self you abandoned. The voice beneath the noise. The real you, starved, waiting, watching. 2. Replace numbing with nourishing. The opposite of addiction is not abstinence. It's connection. To your body. To your mind. To something deeper. You don't need to quit everything overnight. That's just another ego trap. Instead, replace rituals of numbing with rituals of remembering. Instead of scrolling, take a walk with no destination. Instead of binging, journal what the urge is actually trying to cover. Instead of blasting music, listen to the silence between your thoughts. Instead of chasing likes, write something true that no one else will see. You're not trying to become a monk. You're trying to become whole again. 3. Shadow work. Invite what you've buried. Carl Jung wasn't just speaking in metaphor when he warned of the shadow. Your addictions are often just signposts pointing toward a part of you that's been banished. The grief you never processed. The anger you suppressed to seem nice. The longing you labeled too much. The shame you buried under achievement. Here's the practice. Next time you feel the urge to numb, pause. Ask, what am I feeling right now that I don't want to feel? And then feel it anyway, fully, without fixing it, without naming it good or bad. It will hurt, but it will also heal. Because every time you choose to feel what's real instead of what's easy, you break a chain. 4. Create sacred spaces for being. We live in a culture of doing, constantly becoming, chasing, achieving. But your soul, doesn't grow in the noise of doing. It expands in the stillness of being. You need space that is unmonetized, unscheduled, unproductive. Make your mornings sacred again. Reclaim boredom. Watch clouds. Stare at walls. Meditate. Breathe. Do something utterly useless. And do it with reverence. Because in that space, something holy returns. Your aliveness. 5. Reclaim your story. Most people live inside a story they didn't write. You were given scripts. What success looks like. What a good life means. What you should want, fear, love, pursue. And your addictions, those wrong things, fit neatly into that story. They helped you survive it. But what if that story was a lie? What if you could rewrite it? Right now, not with a perfect plan, but with a single truth. I'm not here to be consumed. I'm here to remember who I am. Burn the old script. Write a new one. Start with what you actually value, not what you were told to. Freedom, depth, intimacy, wonder, peace. Then align your actions, your attention, your consumption with that. That's the rebellion. That's the revolution. 6. Seek depth over stimulation. Every time you choose depth, deep work, deep rest, deep conversations, you take back a part of yourself. You trade novelty for truth, noise for resonance, addiction for intimacy, with life, with self, with others. That's the difference between comfort and nourishment. Comfort sedates you. Nourishment awakens you. Ask yourself daily, is this making me more awake or just more numb? Then choose the thing that stings a little. That stretches you. That calls you back to what matters. This path is not easy. It won't always feel good, but it will feel real. And real is rare. And the more real you become, the less addicted you are to the false. Because one day, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day, you'll wake up and realize you haven't needed the numbing in a while. Not because you became stronger, but because you became yourself again. So start now, not with a grand gesture, with a breath, a pause, a question. Something inside you already knows what to do. It's been whispering to you in moments of silence, before the screen lights up again. Will you listen? Because the final part of this journey is coming, and it holds a truth so deep, so piercing, that it could rewrite everything you thought you knew about addiction, about healing, about you. You've broken the surface. You've seen the illusion for what it is, seductive, endless, hollow. You've glimpsed the mechanisms that shaped your hunger and the silence beneath the noise. Now here comes the most dangerous idea of all. Not that you're addicted, but that you were never really broken to begin with. And if that's true, if your compulsions, your distractions, your self-sabotage weren't flaws, but signals, then maybe the question was never, how do I fix myself? Maybe it was, what have I forgotten? Imagine this. You wake up one morning. The same light filters through the curtains. The same responsibilities wait for you. The world hasn't changed, but something in you has. You sit at the edge of your bed, and instead of reaching for your phone, you reach inward, not to escape, not to numb, but to feel. And what you find isn't chaos, isn't emptiness. It's not even pain. It's clarity, a still, warm presence, like something ancient has returned, like yourself, the one buried beneath years of chasing and hiding, has stepped back into the room. You didn't get there through perfection. You got there by staying through the urges, the silence, the aching pull to run. And now, you can finally hear what all those addictions were trying to tell you. You were always searching for yourself. Here's the final truth. Addiction is a calling, not toward the object, but away from disconnection, away from a lie of unworthiness, away from the story that said you had to earn your existence. You weren't chasing pleasure. You were chasing presence. You weren't avoiding pain. You were avoiding being alone with who you've become. But now that you've seen it, now that the mask is dropped, there's no going back. You can't unknow what you now know. Every craving was a compass, pointing toward what was unloved, unprocessed, unseen. And every time you numbed yourself, you were, in a twisted way, trying to protect yourself, trying to soothe the child inside who once felt invisible, trying to manage a reality that felt too sharp, too fast, too much. But here's the miracle. That child is still here. Not broken, not lost, just waiting for you to stop running. Because once you see your addictions for what they are, not enemies, but misguided allies, you don't have to fight them anymore. You just have to listen. What does the craving for distraction say? I'm afraid of being alone. What does the craving for validation say? I never learned how to love myself. What does the craving for consumption say? I don't feel whole. These voices are not here to torment you. They're here to invite you home. And here's the paradox that will set you free. You don't overcome addiction by becoming someone new. You overcome addiction by remembering who you were, before the noise, before the trauma, before the world told you what to want. Your true self has always been just beneath the surface, not in need of fixing, but in need of witnessing. And the moment you begin to meet yourself in wholeness, the addictions begin to loosen their grip, not because you force them away, but because you no longer need them. Let this land. You are not your compulsions. You are not your shame. You are not the behaviors you repeat in darkness. You are the one who notices, the one who watches, the one who, even in the thickest fog, still wants the light. That part of you, the witness, the soul, the essence, is indestructible. It has never been addicted. It has never been lost. It has only been waiting, patiently, lovingly, for you to return. And when you do, the world becomes unrecognizable, not because it changed, but because you did. You see through the noise. You choose stillness over stimulation. You seek truth over comfort. You offer love instead of chasing approval. You create instead of consume. You live, finally, from the inside out. This is not just healing. It's liberation. Not the loud kind, not the cinematic kind, but the kind that happens in small, sacred moments. Saying no when your body says no. Staying present when your mind begs to escape. Choosing authenticity over performance. Touching your pain without flinching. Remembering that your presence is enough. And maybe, just maybe, that's what life has been trying to teach you all along. That the real addiction isn't to things. It's to forgetting. And the real freedom? It's in remembering yourself. Not as a project. Not as a problem to fix. But as a presence to come home to again and again, even when it's hard, even when it hurts, even when everything in you wants to run. Because in that moment of return, you remember the simplest, most powerful truth of all. You were never lost. You were just distracted,